The chicken in your grocery store freezer is a dinosaur, not descended from a dinosaur, not related to a dinosaur. It is a dinosaur. And the story of how a 40-foot apex predator with a bite force of 12,800 pounds became a 4-pound bird you eat with barbecue sauce is one of the strangest survival stories in the history of life on Earth. This is not a metaphor. This is not a stretch. Every scientist working in vertebrate paleontology today accepts it as settled fact. Birds are theropod dinosaurs. The same lineage that produced Tyrannosaurus rex and Velociraptor produced the robin in your yard and the pigeon on the sidewalk and the roasted bird sitting on your Thanksgiving table. And once you understand how that happened, you cannot unsee it. Every time a chicken pecks the ground, you are watching a 150-million-year-old hunting reflex play out in slow motion. Let's start with the punchline and work backward. The scientific name for the group that includes T-Rex, Velociraptor, Giganotosaurus, and every other two-legged carnivorous dinosaur is Theropoda. Theropods are one of the two great branches of the dinosaur family tree. And somewhere inside that branch, in the middle of the Jurassic period, a small subgroup of theropods started doing something new. They grew feathers. The feathers didn't start out as flight equipment. They came for other reasons. Insulation, display, maybe camouflage. The evidence is scattered across dozens of fossil beds in China, particularly in a region called Liaoning, where the volcanic ash preserved soft tissue in a way almost nowhere else on Earth can match. In Liaoning, paleontologists have pulled out theropod after theropod with feathers still attached to the bones. Small ones, large ones. Some with just a fuzz of proto-feathers, some with full plumage that would look at home on a modern hawk. These weren't rare exceptions. Feathered theropods weren't the freaks of the dinosaur world. They were the norm, the default. If you could travel back to the Cretaceous and take a head count, most of the two-legged predators you'd see would have feathers on at least part of their bodies. The scaly, lizard-skinned dinosaurs of your childhood books were, in most cases, wrong. Which brings us to the uncomfortable image. T-Rex almost certainly had feathers, at least when it was young, maybe patches of them across the back and neck as an adult. The largest close relative of T-Rex we have direct feather evidence for is a Chinese species called Yutyrannus, pronounced Ut-ranus, which was about 30 feet long, weighed about 1.5 tons, and was covered in a shaggy coat of downy filaments up to about 8 inches long. 3 fossil skeletons of it were pulled out of the ground in Liaoning province in 2012, and the imprints of the feathers were preserved right alongside the bones. If you saw one in the wild, your first thought wouldn't be dragon. It would be the biggest, angriest chicken I have ever seen in my life. The apex predator of the Cretaceous, the animal your dad bought you a plastic figurine of when you were 5, may have looked more like a monstrous pluck turkey than a reptile. That's not a joke, that's the current science. T-Rex, though, is not the ancestor of birds. That branch of the theropod tree ended 66 million years ago in a bad afternoon involving an asteroid. The birds came from a different, smaller branch. A group called the maniraptorans, pronounced maniraptorans, which includes Velociraptor, Deinonychus, and a strange feathered oddball called Archaeopteryx, pronounced Archaeopteryx, that lived about 150 million years ago in what is now Germany. Archaeopteryx is famous for a reason. It was the first fossil ever discovered that clearly showed both dinosaur features and bird features at the same time. It had teeth. It had a long, bony tail. It had claws on the front of its wings, but it also had asymmetrical flight feathers, a wishbone, and the general architecture of a flying animal. When the first specimen was found in a limestone quarry in Solnhofen, Germany in 1861, just 2 years after Darwin published On the Origin of Species, it landed like a bomb. Here was the transitional form, the missing link, actually not missing, sitting in rock. Creationists at the time called it a hoax. It wasn't. 12 more specimens have been found in the same quarry since, and every one of them tells the same story. For over a century after that, the debate about whether birds were dinosaurs or whether birds just looked like dinosaurs went back and forth. Then, in the 1990s, the Liaoning fossils started coming out of China by the truckload. Feathered theropods, one after another, Sinosauropteryx, pronounced Sinosauropteryx, Caudipteryx, Microraptor, a small dromaeosaur with 4 wings. The evidence stacked up until the debate wasn't a debate anymore. Birds are dinosaurs. Full stop. The only argument left is about the details of the transition. And that transition is where the story gets genuinely weird. Feathers came first, long before flight. The earliest feathered dinosaurs were ground-based hunters and scavengers, and their feathers had nothing to do with flying. They were for staying warm. The theropod lineage was, we now know, mostly warm-blooded or something close to it. High metabolism, fast growth. That kind of physiology needs insulation, especially in small animals. Feathers are extraordinary insulators. So the lineage that would eventually produce birds spent tens of millions of years developing a body covering that had nothing to do with the sky. Then, at some point, a group of small maniraptoran theropods started using their arms differently. Some of them were climbers, some may have leapt from tree to tree, some may have used their feathered arms to stabilize themselves while running up steep surfaces after prey, a behavior modern birds like chukars still use. The technical term is wing-assisted incline running, and it might have been one of the pathways that turned arms into wings. Flight didn't arrive in a single evolutionary jump. It emerged the way most complex traits emerge, through a long sequence of small changes, each one useful on its own terms. Longer arm feathers made you better at balancing. Better balance made you better at leaping. Better leaping made you better at catching flying insects. Better insect catching led to selection for even longer feathers, stronger chest muscles, lighter bones. And after millions of years of that, a group of small theropods crossed a threshold. They could stay in the air. By about 130 million years ago, in the early Cretaceous, true birds were flying alongside their non-flying dinosaur cousins. The two groups lived side by side for the entire rest of the Cretaceous. Ground theropods stalking the floodplains, feathered flying theropods darting through the canopy above them, related, recognizable, both dinosaurs. One group had figured out the sky, the other still owned the ground. And then came the bad afternoon. 66 million years ago, a rock about 9 miles wide hit the Yucatan Peninsula at around 45,000 miles per hour. The Chicxulub impactor released more energy than every nuclear weapon ever built, multiplied by 10,000 in a single instant. The crater it left is over 110 miles wide, wider than the state of Connecticut. Everything within 1,000 miles was vaporized. The rest of the world got firestorms, a global winter, and the collapse of every food chain that depended on sunlight. The non-avian dinosaurs, every last species of them, did not survive. T-Rex, Triceratops, the sauropods, the raptors, the duckbills, gone. Every ecosystem they anchored, gone. The great reptilian pterosaurs, gone. The mosasaurs and plesiosaurs in the oceans, gone. But one group of dinosaurs made it through. A specific subgroup of small, toothless, beaked flying theropods called the Neornithes, pronounced Neornithes, modern birds. Their ancestors were already flying, already small, already capable of eating a wider variety of foods than their larger cousins. When the world burned, they were the theropods that squeaked through the bottleneck. That is the entire lineage that connects T-Rex to the chicken in your fridge. A tiny group of small feathered dinosaurs huddled somewhere in the smoking ruins of the Cretaceous, whose descendants would eventually radiate into over 10,000 species and colonize every continent on Earth. There are more species of birds alive today than mammals, reptiles, and amphibians combined. Every one of them is a dinosaur. Look at your Thanksgiving turkey next time it's sitting on the counter, plucked and pink. Look at the shape of it. Look at the wishbone. Look at the way the legs bend. That leg bend, that specific S-curve where the knee goes forward and the ankle looks like a backward knee, is the exact same architecture as a T-Rex leg. Same joints, same proportions, same muscle attachments. You are looking at a scaled-down theropod on a serving platter. The bird foot is a theropod foot. 3 main forward-facing toes, 1 reduced rear toe. Same pattern you find fossilized in Cretaceous mud from Montana to Mongolia. When a chicken walks through your backyard and leaves a print in the dirt, that print is structurally identical to prints paleontologists have been digging out of 100-million-year-old rock for over a century. The digestive system is the same, too. Birds and non-avian theropods both use a gizzard filled with swallowed stones to grind up food. T-Rex had gastroliths. So does a chicken. When a hawk hunts, it uses a strategy that biomechanics researchers have compared directly to the hunting behavior we reconstruct for Velociraptor and Deinonychus. Grasp with the feet, immobilize with the weight, kill with the teeth, or, in modern birds, the beak. The move is called the raptor-prey restraint model. It works for a red-tailed hawk. It worked for a 6-foot Cretaceous killer with a sickle claw. Same behavior, same lineage. The ostrich, the largest bird alive today, is basically a small theropod that never bothered to shrink, about 9 feet tall, up to 350 pounds, 2-legged, fast, territorial. It can kill a lion with a single kick. Watch a slow-motion video of an ostrich running and then watch a paleontological animation of a gallimimus, pronounced gallimimus, a real dinosaur from the late Cretaceous. The gaits are almost identical because the anatomy is almost identical, because they are the same kind of animal separated by 66 million years. Now, before we go further, we need to correct something. Not every scientist accepts that the ostrich or the chicken should be called a dinosaur in casual conversation. Some prefer to say that birds are the surviving descendants of theropod dinosaurs, technically distinct from the extinct groups. That is a valid framing, and if you're writing a peer-reviewed paper, you should probably use it. But in cladistics, the branch of biology that classifies living things by their evolutionary relationships, the mainstream position is that if a group evolved from another group, it is still part of that group. Humans are apes, apes are primates, primates are mammals, and birds are dinosaurs. You don't stop being what your ancestors were just because you got smaller or grew a beak. The genealogy is the identity, which means the last true dinosaur is not the T-Rex fossil in the Field Museum in Chicago. The last true dinosaur is the one that just took off from the branch outside your window. There are consequences to this that most people never think about. Consider what a bird actually is once you accept it as a dinosaur. It is a warm-blooded animal with a 4-chambered heart, a high-speed metabolism, and a respiratory system unlike anything else alive. Birds don't breathe the way mammals do. They have a one-way airflow system with air sacs distributed throughout the body cavity and even into some of the bones. It's twice as efficient as our lungs, and it appears to have evolved in the theropod lineage well before flight did, which means T-Rex almost certainly had the same air sac system, the same super-efficient breathing architecture. It's part of why some paleontologists now think T-Rex could run faster and endure longer than we used to believe. The parental care is theropod too. Many species of non-avian theropods sat on nests. We have fossils of Oviraptor, pronounced O-H-V-I-H raptor, a small feathered dinosaur in the exact posture a mother chicken uses to brood eggs. Legs tucked under, arms spread over the clutch, body forming a protective dome. That fossil was found in the Gobi Desert in 1993. It was the same year Jurassic Park hit theaters, and while the movie was showing raptors bursting through doors, the real science was quietly proving that raptors were sitting on nests like farm birds. Vocalization is another link. Modern birds have an incredibly complex vocal organ called the syrinx, pronounced C-rinx. It sits deep in the chest at the base of the trachea. It's what lets birds sing. Non-avian dinosaurs probably didn't have a syrinx, So the Hollywood roar you associate with T-Rex is likely wrong. What T-Rex probably made was a low, closed-mouth vocalization more like the sound an alligator makes when it wants to be intimidating. A deep, rumbling boom, almost subsonic. You would feel it in your chest before you heard it. Modern birds like ostriches and crocodiles both use closed-mouth calls, and the best current guess is that T-Rex used something similar. If you were standing in a Cretaceous forest at dusk, hearing that sound would be worse than hearing a roar. A roar tells you where the animal is and gives you a chance to run. A low boom felt in the sternum does not. You would just know that something enormous was near without knowing where. Let's zoom back out to the philosophical scale. The dinosaurs did not lose. The dinosaurs won. They just won by getting smaller. By 66 million years ago, they had already produced dozens of small, feathered, warm-blooded, high-metabolism species that were ready for what came next. When the asteroid hit, the giants died. The little ones flew, and they radiated into every ecological niche the megafauna had left behind. Today, dinosaurs are on every continent, including Antarctica. There are dinosaurs living in the Sahara. There are dinosaurs in the Arctic Circle. There are dinosaurs at 20,000 feet in the Andes and dinosaurs diving 1,700 feet deep in the Southern Ocean. Emperor penguins are dinosaurs that gave up on flying to become better swimmers. Ostriches are dinosaurs that gave up on flying to run. Hummingbirds are dinosaurs that shrank down to a body weight of a few grams and figured out how to hover. The mammals, of which we are a member, never fully overtook the birds. There are about 6,400 mammal species alive today. There are more than 10,000 bird species. The dinosaurs still outnumber us in raw diversity. They are, in a very real sense, still winning. And if you own a chicken coop, if you keep parakeets, if you feed the pigeons in the park, if you eat a chicken sandwich, you are interacting with the last surviving branch of the same evolutionary tree that produced the most terrifying predators the planet ever hosted. The genealogy runs unbroken from a 150-million-year-old feathered climber to the omelette you had this morning. That is why all roads lead to chicken. That is a literal statement about the shape of the tree of life. Every path through the theropod family tree, every branch, every subgroup either ends 66 million years ago in a crater in Mexico or continues to the present day as a bird. And of all the birds humans have ever domesticated, none has become more ubiquitous than the chicken. There are somewhere between 25 and 30 billion chickens alive on Earth at any given time. That is more than 3 chickens for every human being. If you added up the total living biomass of all birds on the planet, chickens alone would account for more than 2/3 of it, which means, by weight, the majority of all the dinosaurs currently walking around the surface of this planet are chickens raised for human consumption. The dinosaurs' final act, after 165 million years of ruling the Earth, is to feed us. The apex predators of the Cretaceous have descendants that are now the most farmed animal in human history. Something like 70 billion chickens are slaughtered every year, which means humanity kills more dinosaurs in a single year than existed cumulatively as large-bodied theropods across the entire age of reptiles. If T-Rex could see it, would it feel proud? Would it feel betrayed? Neither, probably. It wouldn't feel anything, because that's not how evolution works. But the poetry of it is hard to ignore. The lineage that once produced 9-ton killers now produces the McNugget. The teeth that once crushed Triceratops bone now peck at cracked corn in a coop in Iowa. The bloodline is the same. The scale has just changed. Look at a bird sometime, any bird. Watch how it moves. Watch the sharp, twitchy head motion. Watch the way it locks its eyes on something for a fraction of a second before darting forward. That head motion, that predator's gaze, is 150 million years old. It was already there in the theropods of the Jurassic. It was there in Velociraptor and Deinonychus. It is there in the sparrow on your porch. You are watching a hunting reflex older than the flowering plants themselves. The dinosaurs are not extinct. They are diminished, they are miniaturized, they are covered in feathers instead of scales, but they are still here. They survived the worst day in the history of the planet. They kept flying while everything else burned. And the fact that you can find one of them in the freezer aisle of your local grocery store is not the punchline of the dinosaurs' story. It is the ending they earned. And that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.